Welcome to the SparkRoom webinar series. SparkRoom provides full-service, data-driven marketing and technology solutions to ignite your performance marketing. Our webinars provide actionable advice and insight to help you better strategize, execute, analyze, and optimize your marketing campaign efforts.
Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Bryan, and I'm the Vice President of Corporate Marketing and Communications here at SparkRoom. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Finding, Identifying, and Tracking Your Cross-Channel Marketing Data for Campaign Attribution and Optimization. Originally presented at LeadsCon New York in August, today's live webinar is an encore presentation. Our speakers today are Akil Hyder, the SparkRoom Vice President of Audience Marketing, and Anthony Nader, the SparkRoom Product Manager focused on advancing our marketing software. Together, Akil and Anthony have been researching and innovating to discover the best ways for marketers to track performance, analyze, and optimize cross-channel marketing campaigns. Throughout the process, they've realized there's a lot marketers could be doing right now, starting today, if only someone pointed them in the right direction. Before we get started, let me quickly tell you about SparkRoom. Through a combination of marketing services and marketing software, we help higher education institutions maximize their marketing efforts to quickly boost enrollments. Our award-winning marketing software integrates campaign data, automates processes based on performance, and provides effortless analytics and reporting, solving many of the challenges higher education marketers face on a daily basis. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Now I'll pass things over to Anthony and Akil.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you for joining us, everyone, today. My name is Akil Hyder, and I'm the VP of Audience Marketing at SparkRoom. My team is in charge of all first-party in-house media buying and campaigns that we do on behalf of our agency clients. My team is dedicated to helping our clients meet their acquisition goals through cross-channel, holistic media plans, strategy through execution, and providing valuable insight along the way. And that's what me and my team do. And handing it over to Anthony.
Yeah, I'm Anthony Nader, product manager here at SparkRoom, and a lot of the products I primarily manage help Akil's team, his audience marketing team, drive some of their marketing efforts around some of our marketing reportings and web capabilities. So yeah, today we're gonna dive into talking about cross-channel attribution. Akil is going to go over some of the basics on why it's important, why you should be paying attention to it, and he's going to go through some examples that him and his team have done for some of our clients. And then I'm going to go more into what you can do today to really get started to help give you some of this cross-channel marketing attribution view with some of your current campaigns and your current marketing mix. So yeah, go ahead, Akil.
Thank you, Anthony. So we'll start, and feel free to, during the presentation, to put your question in through the panel there, and we'll be able to answer them at the end of the session. So when I start talking about attribution, I think we all know that there's a challenge there today, right? And what is that challenge? All marketers and brands that run various marketing campaigns across multiple channels face this challenge. It's a dilemma that's represented pretty much in how do you attribute your marketing dollars correctly to the channels that are producing the most valuable performance for you. The issue is that most of us currently and today and from the beginning of advertising are mostly able to see what we call the last click attribution, the final point that led that person to becoming your customer or to do that sale, but not necessarily all the touch points that have helped throughout the journey of that prospective student or customer to becoming a student, right? And so the dilemma is that pretty much that's what we're facing, and so what can we do about it? In reality is a lot of the marketers and the brands out there recognize this problem. The issue is that when Google and IBM did a joint study, and they found that maybe in 2012 there was a recognition about it, but only 15% had answered that they did something beyond the last click attribution. They were able to provide insights beyond just that last touch point that led to the customer acquisition. In 2015, that definitely got better, right, 35%, but we still have a long way to go, and maybe that's why it's a timely topic today. For ourselves, when we look at performance holistically across channel, we're able to do some cross-channel attribution correctly, and we'll talk about exactly what that means. We're able to see an incredible lift in performance. That includes a decrease in effective CPA, increase in volume and quality. So understanding it in sort of today complex digital fragmented marketplace is really very important to achieve your goals, both on the bottom of the funnel acquisition goals, but also on the ROI that's related really to the business at the end of the day. So before we go any further, let's define what attribution is. So we talked about the customer journey or the prospective customer to become a journey. You know, attribution has evolved, and the evolution has been in trying to understand what that journey is. And so attribution, the definition of it, at least the way we'd like to put it, is as trying to assign a value and credit where the value is due, right? So it's trying to understand which events, touch points, interactions have happened with that customer along the way, and you know, which ones have the combination of those, which combination of those have led to actually that person becoming a customer or leading into, you know, resulting into sales. Attribution itself is not a technology on its own. It's a process. When we talk about the process, it's really the process of tracking all those touch points correctly. It's the process of collecting that data and housing it efficiently and be able to find it and process it. Is you know, it's also about measurement techniques. How do you measure this data, and how are you going to be able to visualize it and digest it to come out with a valuable insight that then you can apply in some sort of attribution modeling that will enable you to be more efficient. It's also about bridging the gaps. You know, there's nothing today that can sort of bridge all the gaps 100%, and we'll talk about why. I mean, when we say cross-channel or multi-channel attribution, we're really talking about three different things. We're talking about someone, you know, are you able to track and measure on a user level the interaction that are happening within the same device, but let's speak digitally. If that person have seen your ads in multiple places, Facebook, Twitter, your website, etc., are you able to track that and report on it so it become part of that journey? So that's multi-channel attribution within the same device, right? And it's probably a good place to start and an easier place to track. Then you add another layer on top of that, which is cross-device attribution, and now that person who's interacting with your brand and with your messaging and with your ads is crossing devices as well as being, you know, touched by various channels. So now you add, so there's a challenge in trying to do the attribution here, because we lose the tracking once they switch devices. And what can you do about that? There's multiple methods available, but nothing is 100%, right? And then you add to that complexity offline media and the impact of that on your online media, right? That TV flight that added a lift to the rest of the channels, or vice versa. Maybe that TV or that sort of online ad that actually resulted in a person calling in by dialing or walking into the door to your school, for example. So that's what we mean. You know, it's good to break it down to sort of have a little bit of a basis for us to go and sort of tackle these various parts. All right. So when a lot of marketers and brands today, when we talk about attribution, I think they want to understand everything, the holistic view. It's also important to know which ones of the channels that you're running in your media mix are sort of the top of the funnel, the starting channels, the channels that are starting that prospective user or customer on their journey, right? And then which ones are the influencer that are moving them down the funnel? And finally, which ones are the closers, right? There is no one way or one path. There are no two users that take the same path to get to you. And so based on your media mix and your own setup of how you do your marketing efforts and brand and all of the various factors, you'll see that that specifically for you at the specific time, that there are specific channels that will be those starting channels and influencers and contributors. And the analogy here is similar to a sports team that has to pass the ball. Someone has to initiate that pass and then pass it along until the forward will score, for in this example of a soccer team. So understanding the user behavior, the modern user behavior, is sort of the first part in understanding how to do or to get a handle on the cross-channel attribution. So we talked a little bit about the multi-touch and how users will basically, for them, they will choose the path that's convenient to them. It doesn't matter to them what device they use or what ads they were influenced by. What matters to them is what's convenient, and what they expect is consistency across all of that. A lot of studies show that they want to see the brand being communicated and interacted with in the same way across the devices and channels. So really for marketers and for brands trying to design a customer experience or a journey experience is really important from that matter. Now you add to that, like I said, things like offline channels, call centers, inbound calls, and you can see that the challenge of tracking, it does become sort of overwhelming. But again, we're here to talk about some of the ways you can overcome that. So some of the things that I've seen that unfortunately, brands sometimes just go by without thinking about the bigger picture. Most CRMs only capture the last click attribution, only capture that last touch point, right? There's one or two fields and doesn't tell you, more than that. Also, there's a lack of understanding of which channels have impacted other channels, right? So maybe doing a social campaign will actually boost your paid search campaign, but to what extent, right? Trying to have what I call an effective distributed frequency, the principle of trying to, because of the fragmented digital marketplace that we live in, it's vital and important to reach out to your audience where they are and in the formats that they expect the media to be consumed, right? And so you being on one or two channels that the audience is in, but you're ignoring the other channels that they're interacting with. For example, they're on Instagram and they watch a certain channel at a certain time and you're only approaching them in one way. You're not really having the effective frequency principle apply, because now it's a distributed effective frequency. You need to reach out to them on those multiple channels to be able to get the right results for them to be influenced by the brand and eventually move down the funnel. Simple things sometimes like having view-through inquiries being tracked is something that I haven't seen in some clients that we take on at the beginning and try to help them with that. So just to define that for those who may not know what that is you're seeing an ad, you're clicking on an ad, let's say it's a digital ad, you're clicking on interacting with it, and you're going to the website and you are inquiring or buying. That's direct and last click. Now, if you just see the ad and then somehow forget about it or don't click, but it stays in your mind, you've been influenced by it, then you go and do a paid search click, or you somehow type in the website directly, and you're able to track those inquiries. Those are view-through inquiries. Those are people who have seen the ad but not necessarily interacted with it directly to inquire. They came through other means, right? So it's important to track. As simple as that method of tracking, and it's an available thing through digital media today, it's an important one, right? So because you can lift your website through some of the digital channels. That's just one example. The other thing I like to talk about is that if you are used to just buying leads today or inquiries, and that's your model, you're really missing out on the entire funnel, right? I mean, so your brand has to have had a top of the funnel type campaign to influence that user, whether it's a referral or somebody they know or a TV or radio ad. Then they've done their research. Then they're now at the point where they have the intent and they're buying. So if you're just capturing the intent and just applying your dollars to say, yeah, my users, my CPL and my enrollment is equaling just, based on the amount of spend I spend on those media dollars spent to acquire through a paper lead channel, you're really missing out on the entire user journey here, which is very important to optimize that entire funnel horizontally and vertically. So to give you an example of what I'm talking about in this last attribution, I'm just going to go through a few examples that we've done recently, both on display media and on an email campaign, just to show you what I mean in terms of numbers. We've done, this is one of our large brick and mortar clients that have campuses across the country, pretty large schools. So we've done a display campaign that is mostly a web banners and video campaign to show the impact of that campaign on enrollments, right? And if you're familiar with display, and if you're doing media buying through things like demand side platforms and ad networks and so on, with the exception of Facebook in this case, you'll see that there's a trend, and the trend is that 99.9% of the people who are seeing the ads are not going to click on it. That doesn't mean that they're not influenced by it. It just means that their behavior of interacting with that is different. So in this case, we've built a lookalike audience for this client. It's basically a method where we take a seed of conversions from our client database, we add to it an enrichment process, we enrich that data with third-party data and sort of filling the gaps and add a little bit more insights into that audience, and then through predictive algorithmic factors we're able to say, hey, who are the similar audiences in the United States that look exactly like the students that I have, right? And how can I reach out to them? Where do they live? What type of media they consume? So we build a profile, and it's a lookalike profile, and then we try to target these guys across various media, right? So it's a one-on-one, it's a audience-based targeting and not a website-based targeting, without getting into the details of it. So we went and bought programmatic distribution, against it, meaning we're trying to reach out with that inventory that we have to promote 3 specific programs for that school in this case, and so we bought the media against exactly that audience. So to give you an example, we took 5,000 conversions from the client. We, through the lookalike modeling, were able to amplify it to about 4.5 million. So now we have a nationwide lookalike audience, and then we apply layers on top of it, whether it's interest or things like geography, to make sure that it's within the accepted geography, and that's how we reached out to them. So they were seeing ads and videos on various websites that they visit online and on their mobile device. So what are the results from there? Here's what we found. People who have interacted with those ads, like I said, only 2% of those who did some sort of interaction with the ad did it directly, meaning they clicked on the ad and went to either the landing page or the website. But the other 98%, and we rounded the numbers here, it's a little bit more, but the other 98% really were influenced by the ad later on, meaning they've seen the ad and then they did their, they went on their own path. Instead of clicking on that banner and that video, here's where they ended up. And this is the interesting part, right? So they, first of all, before even doing this closed loop analysis to understand where they ended up, we've seen an immediate lift in Google brand terms search volume. So what does that mean is that we've enhanced or influenced right away and gave a lift to people who were searching on Google for that specific brand. So now we know that we had an impact, right, immediately, because about a week after, we've seen that lift. So those ads were not useless. 98% of the users didn't click on it. It didn't mean that it wasn't successful. There's a percentage that immediately start looking for the brand on Google. But when we did the closed loop analysis, that means that, hey, those people that we've targeted, did they end up in becoming a student? And so 90 days after, when we did our analysis, we've realized that we've first provided a lift of 27% in inquiries, meaning those guys ended, there's a 20% lift that was attributed to this campaign from users who have ended up in other channels inquiring about the school. Okay. Also, a bottom of the funnel lift of 11% in starts. So the campaign, if you just look at it from a last click attribution, was really, from an ROI perspective, was a failure. But then when you do a closed loop analysis and you do a holistic view of it, and you try to understand, what is the impact on the bottom line, and have I influenced, users to become students? I've seen that out of the 90% users that I've reached and had influence on them, yeah, they came in and they basically came in directly through the website. They came in through paid search. They came in even as referrals, and most interestingly, they've ended up with vendors that the school was buying leads from, and we know we've served them an ad, but yet they came in through vendors through a PPL channel, right? So that's what's important to know, is that you are having influence every time you have a marketing campaign. Not measuring doesn't mean that it's not successful. It just means that you need to understand what is that influence resulting in, and sometimes you're able to measure it.
Great, thank you so much, Megan. Now, if any of our attendees have any additional questions or like further information, feel free to reach out to us at webinars@sparkroom.com. Thank you for joining us today, everyone, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay. So these are inquiries in the funnel that have inquired about a specific school. This is a different client, and never materialized in an enrollment. So about 2 to 3 years after, I say we took everything from 6 months back to 3 years, and we said, okay, well, what if we reach out to them through an email campaign, an automated, personalized, mobile optimized, right, responsive type email campaign, and we reached out to them and said, are you still interested? And so we created this automated campaign, and we tried to reach out to these inquiries. Those are guys who just never materialized. They've inquired, they were interested, they maybe result in an application, just never enrolled. And what we've seen is something, again, when we did that sort of analysis on the users that ended up becoming a student, here's what we saw. So first of all, which is very interesting, is that only 40% of those who inquired came in directly through the email creative itself. So they clicked through a last click attribution, they came in and inquired on the landing page directly. Okay, great. If you're doing last click attribution ROI, then that's your ROI there. But the reality is that 60% of those who became students who saw the email, who became inquiries, again, re-inquiries, who saw the email, came in through other channels again. And these are the channels that they came from, right? So yes, the email landing page resulted in most starts, right, and enrolls, as we should expect, because somebody who we ignite their interest again, and they were ready to reply. But we've seen also that, again, the organic and other landing pages of the school and vendors and content pages, to the extent that we can track it, we've seen that other starts and enrolls came in, and re-inquiries came in from other channels as well. So it was an eye-opener, and frankly, I see this every day. Every time we do a case study for every campaign that we run that we're able to track beyond the last click, we're able to see this type of behavior. So it's very important that we understand that and look at that, right? So now that I give you some examples and we talk what the definition is, there are standard attribution models that you can apply, and those are things that you can do, and Anthony will talk a little bit more about that in the second part of this presentation. But if you think about the definition where we talked about trying to assign value or the right value to those touch points based on the on the yield that they're giving us, then maybe applying one of these standard attribution models doesn't really sort of apply to the definition, but it can definitely help you do a comparison. If you're configured correctly with some simple software like GA, which again Anthony will talk about, then you can see immediate decrease in eCPA based on these various models. But first of all, we established one important thing here, is that last click attribution is not a good way. If it's the only way, it's better than nothing, but it's not definitely the best way to look at campaign performance, okay, or your marketing effort performance. Now, based on the definition, yes, you can apply these other standard models, time decay, first click attribution, linear, so you can assign value equally to all the touch points, or maybe most of it to the first touch point, or most of it to sort of over time. Those are good things to compare the results from, but based on the definition, also not good, right? And so what we need at the end of the day is a data-driven attribution model that is customized for the brand and for the marketing mix and effort that you're currently doing. But don't be overwhelmed or intimidated or disappointed by all this, because there is a place you can start. And this is what Anthony will show you where you can start. And this is just a starting place that we'll be talking about. And he'll talk maybe a little bit at the end about, where do you go from there. But handing it over to Anthony.
Thanks, Akil. Yeah, that was really great. And just some examples about what Akil and his team here can do to apply some of these principles. We've seen some great success around all this. But, like you mentioned, don't really be intimidated by all of this. This is something you can actually start today, right? So what can you really do? What does it really take to set up your organization for some kind of cross-channel attribution tracking, right? So you could create that most optimal marketing mix, right? Put you on that path to drive your conversion metrics up while providing the optimal ROI for your spend. So first of all, I just want to establish, right, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? And I want to just go over some basic things here that we need to establish just to get started, right? You need to have a baseline understanding, really, of what is your current digital marketing mix? What channels do you currently have within that mix? Are you thinking about adding channels in, maybe removing channels, and you need some kind of data behind it to justify those changes? Do you have some kind of understanding about the current average touch points that users are taking before they actually convert? And what are your conversion goals, right? Having clearly defined conversion goals for your marketing efforts is extremely important. What are your measurements for success? Do you really want to just measure the that last touch point where someone turns into a conversion or a prospective student, or do you want to measure deeper down that funnel? Do you want to attribute enrollments and starts and applications to some of your pre-lead marketing efforts? So having a clear understanding of some of these baseline metrics is an important place to start. So establishing this and then moving on to, what can you do to get started? So at a very high level, some of the tasks you need to get started, right, and Nikhil mentioned this before, we need to really track everything. We need to identify the different data sources that all of your marketing efforts are coming from. So, display or paid search or social or even offline. And then how are you tracking all this? How are you reporting all of this in some kind of unified software solution? So when we talk about data and tracking, right, we're talking about three main groups of metrics you really need to capture. And a lot of that is your event data. You have contextual data, as well as your cost and spend data. And event data encompasses everything from the impressions to clicks to how the user are actually engaging, on your website, your landing page, or just with your brand in general, and then eventually becoming a conversion. And then moving along to the contextual data, that helps to identify where those impressions, clicks, and conversions came from, right? So what's the specific campaign that drove this conversion? What are some keywords that may have driven this conversion in the specific channel or source? And then tying together your cost and spend data to attribute some kind of CPA or CPL to these conversions or prospective students that you're driving with all these marketing efforts. And again, like Akil mentioned, a lot of the value behind this is being able to determine your ROI for that overall marketing mix, right? So we need to be able to incorporate your cost data. So digging a little bit deeper into each of these high-level tasks, right? Tracking everything. So how are you going to track everything? This is the most essential starting point for any kind of attribution, right? If you're not tracking your data as accurately and as cleanly as you possibly can, you potentially can set yourself up for risk for drawing some of the wrong insights from the data that you're going to eventually be reporting on. So you really have to ensure that your tracking is set up completely as properly as you can and close some of those gaps that Akil mentioned as much as possible. And some of the standard ways of tracking your data, like pixels and cookies, they still apply here. From a digital standpoint, they still apply. There are some gaps, right? But you need to be able to track a user across the different channels. And if you have some kind of business model where you have some kind of unified login, that might be another way to track, as well as some URL parameters with all of your tracking and URLs that are driving to your landing pages, or some of your forms or affiliate sources, making sure that they're tracked through URL parameters or pixels is absolutely imperative. So how are you integrating all of these data sources? Like I mentioned before, you have, oh, I don't think it switched there. Oh, yeah, it did. So how are you integrating all of these data sources, right? So identifying those data sources. So you have Google AdWords, you have Bing, you might have email, maybe some offline metrics that come into play. All of these various data sources, where are they coming from? How are you collecting them? Do you have some kind of software solution where you can pull all of this data together and then track and report on it? So how are you going to track this, right? Where all this data is coming together? It really ensures ensuring your channels are being tracked with as little to no gaps as possible between those channels, at least down to a user level, right? And being able to start to get the reporting that helps you draw some of these insights to really optimize your marketing mix. Really start to drill down and gain those insights from this new information to help you answer the questions. What channels are directly lifting the performance of others? What campaigns earlier in that conversion path deserve more credit than others? And this is where you can look at those different attribution models that Akil was bringing up earlier, right, to help you determine what best is representative for your current marketing efforts, right? If you're investing a lot of time and dollars into more top of the funnel branding, so like TV or display, maybe some of those earlier touch points need to carry more weight in your evaluation of this data. It's also going to help you identify, what low-hanging fruits are there that I can quickly change in my current marketing mix to drive up those conversions and drive down my my overall spend. So we talked about this before. Akil mentioned this. So say you're all set up and you have some kind of attribution software at your fingertips. Everything's being tracked, but we have to understand that some of these paths are not going to be 100%. There are gaps, and some of those gaps, like Akil mentioned, are between cross-device or even view-through or even offline tracking. Acknowledging these gaps exist enable you to be a little bit more creative in how you approach your tracking and how you're reporting on it, especially with offline tracking. You might want to be a little bit more creative to help close that gap. And one example, right, for being creative with offline tracking is if you have a TV ad or, say, billboard, I don't know, anything non-digital, or radio, you might be driving those users or listeners to a specific URL, and you could use like a vanity URL. So then when they go to their laptop or they go to their mobile phone or tablet, they might search for that URL, which then will redirect and apply some tracking parameters to identify, all right, this user now within my digital marketing mix originated from this specific TV ad, this specific campaign or billboard. So being a little bit creative around how you're driving people from offline to online digital channels is one way to really help close that gap. And some of the traditional ways that people have been doing this for a while, right, is so you have baseline metrics for your website or landing page, and then you have a TV flight that's aired during a specific period or a specific geo, which then you can overlay on top of the baseline metrics, and then you could calculate the lift based on your conversions and interactions on, say, your website or organic search during that specific time frame. So then you can attribute that to your TV ad, right? And this is something people have been doing for a while, and it still applies here. Okay, so what can you do to get started today? So most of us, most of our digital marketing efforts, even offline, we're driving people to our website or a landing page. We might even have affiliates driving to our website. So a great place to start is obviously your website, and you should have some kind of tracking already on your website. So we're going to talk about today using Google Analytics, and it's a completely cost-effective solution. It's free. Again, most of you should have it on your website already, and they provide a lot of these cross-channel attribution reporting capabilities right out of the box to really help you, again, get started, to understand your current marketing mix and where some of those low-hanging fruits lie so you can optimize and move your success forward. So diving a little bit into Google Analytics, right? So by default, any sources coming from Google, like AdWords or the Google Display Network, automatically will integrate within Google Analytics. But what about some of those non-Google sources? So Bing, maybe you have specific email campaigns, specific social network campaigns you need to identify. This is where some of that URL tagging can really be helpful. So Google allows you to, they have a standard tagging method where you apply, you can identify the campaign, specific medium, or even maybe a specific thing, content like newsletter one or fall newsletter. So when someone converts through that URL on your website or even on an affiliate's website, that information gets pushed into your Google Analytics, and you can easily filter by some of those data points within your reporting. So tagging is an essential way to track, in addition to things like we talked before, so things like pixels and cookies, to track some of those non-Google sources. And hopefully all of you who do have Google Analytics installed on your website, you're upgraded to the most recent version, so Universal Analytics. So again, this is a great place to start. It's a little bit more manual, but you all should have this at your fingertips. And some of the configurations you need to consider using Google Analytics to do your cross-channel attribution reporting, right, or making sure, again, all your URLs are tagged properly. If you have affiliates driving traffic to your site that are converting, or even they're converting on their own sites, so third-party website, you can provide them with custom conversion tags, which also will push data into your own Google Analytics interface so you can report on that, right? Make sure you have your conversion goals correctly configured within Google Analytics as well. So like if someone lands on a page and they convert and then they get taken to a thank you page, make sure you have that set up as a conversion goal to say, all right, this person converted, they were brought to a thank you page. This counts as a lead in our system. And then even, do you need to integrate with a CRM or a lead management system, or even import some offline data? The free version of Google Analytics allows you to do all this. What they do to allow you to integrate with a CRM or LMS, they have what is called the measurement protocol. So it allows you to ping some of this campaign data and push it back into your Google Analytics, and then tie it using their client ID, which is assigned by the Google Analytics cookie, to some of the pre-lead marketing channel or marketing path. So this is really helpful in our case. So if you want to track some of those more downstream conversion metrics, so things like enrollments or applications, this can be one way to do that, and pushing those conversion goals from an LMS or CRM then into Google Analytics, and then tying that to some of those previous campaigns using some kind of unique identifier or client ID. You're able to get that full end-to-end view and make those attributions. So saying these conversions that happened beyond just the lead can be attributed to this specific marketing mix, these specific user journeys or user paths. So this slide really represents some of the reporting capabilities that Google Analytics provides right out of the box, right? So if you're tracking everything correctly, you're identifying your sources correctly within Google Analytics, you can easily just go to sections within there to see these multi-channel funnels and conversion paths. It even allows you to see what kind of assists each source contributed. So in the example here, right, so paid search had 45 assisted conversions. So what does that exactly mean? So paid search was part of a conversion path that translated into 45 conversions, but they were not that last click. They weren't that final touch point in that conversion path. So you can attribute they assisted 45 other conversions, right? It also allows you to assign some value to those different paths. It allows you to apply different attribution models. So like we mentioned before, last click or time decay allows you to see those different attribution models side by side. And again, this is all right out of the box within Google Analytics. Some of the other reporting that they show you allows you to maybe overlay your marketing mix in, this nice little Venn diagram to see where your different channels intersect. Allows you to quickly determine your average path length to conversion, as well as assigning the value and your ROI for some of those conversion paths. And again, this is just a starting point. If you're interested in getting into cross-channel attribution, interested in learning how your overall marketing mix and marketing channels are impacting one another, where those lifts are occurring, this is a great place to start because we all have a website, right? We're driving most of our traffic or digital marketing efforts to a website or landing page, and a lot of this is readily available for you. You just need to configure things and track things properly, right? In this screen, from a starting point, once you're starting to look at some of this attribution data, at least I think provides some really good value that you may not have had before, right? So in this example, we're looking again specifically at paid search. We're seeing the different user journeys or paths that your prospective leads have taken before actually converting. So you can see all the way down there, number 11, there were 6 conversions where somebody organically searched for your brand, and then they came through directly typing in your URL in their browser, and then they eventually converted, but through a paid search channel. And then you can see other channels that paid search also can be attributed converting. So number 2 at the top, so somebody directly typed in or directly came to your website and converted. It was about 14% of overall conversions. They originally came through a paid search channel. So this can help answer that question, right? I want to cut budget from channel X, but is this really going to impact one or more of my other marketing channels' performance? What is that actual return? So it helps you with some of those budget decisions you need to make, or maybe if you want to adjust some of your marketing efforts from one channel to another. Google Analytics is a great starting point here.
Yeah, Anthony, thank you. That's fantastic. And if you want to go back just to the last channel, I just want to clarify just one thing very quickly before we go to questions. And when we do this for clients, and again, this is just a starting point, we immediately start seeing insights that are very valuable. So if 70% of your users are coming through specific paths, then you know that path is important, right? Just like Anthony mentioned. But what I want to say here before we go into questions is that Google Analytics allows you to do multi-channel reporting, within the same device for things other than Google sources, right? So to the extent that Google can track cross-device, say within paid search or organically, they will show you that if the user is logged in through multiple devices, that's already included. Right. But in most cases, either users are not logged in or you're configuring all your other media to come into Google Analytics. So this is a place where you can you see that view for the first part we mentioned, right? Mostly, which is the multi-channel digital attribution within the same device, and it's a great starting point because you can save a lot there. And obviously, if you want to go more in a more sophisticated way where you can sort of apply very sophisticated attribution modeling that are maybe predictive and so on based on your own data, then you might need other software, right? You might implement third-party software to bridge the cross-device gap, to bridge the offline gap, where you can import your post logs and see all the visuals and so on. So anyway, that's all that I wanted to add. And
you're totally right here. So again, it's just a starting point, right? So it helps you assess if you need something more enterprise level to help reach those attribution goals. But yeah, this last slide, right? Rest in peace, last click attribution. Died while crossing from one device to another.
And yeah, we're happy to take your questions, and back to you, Kathy.
All right. Thank you, Anthony and Akil. So we're going to take questions from the attendees now, just like Akil was saying. Please type your questions into the question box on your webinar control panel. If you don't see the control panel, look for the orange box with the arrow. Click on that arrow and the control panel will expand. And we got a few in while you guys were presenting, so I'm going to read them in the order that they were received. So first, do you tend to see one vendor outperforming all the others? Akil, this was in reference to the slide when you were talking about results that had the bar chart with the different vendors. Do you typically see one vendor outperform the others?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and the question goes to the matter of the core of what we're talking about here, which is, can you really say this vendor outperforms based on, say, just the last click, right? So you really need to look at it holistically, right? And for us to say this vendor is outperforming is to see what is their influence on all the other channels and on that path to become a customer or a student or a sale. And so once you determine that, then yes. And so to answer the question is, we're seeing that things like paid search, organic, which is your brand effect, the top of the funnel, and social, are having impact across the funnel, right? So they're becoming starters, influencers, and closers. So no question that these are the most important channels. So when it comes to a vendor, I cannot say one vendor or a website or a publisher. It's really your own effort. The way I look at it in my daily sort of management of the team and the campaigns is that we say brand is everything, right? That's number one. And then audience is sort of the other piece, right? So that's really what you need to look at to determine what best performs.
Okay, so again, referring back to one of the case studies you presented, is email re-engagement effective with a traditional age student base?
It is more effective than you can imagine, actually. So we've seen conversions happen from people who have inquired about 3 years ago. And to us, it was, again, an eye-opener. We really wanted to sort of, in many cases, sometimes we say, okay, let's not go beyond 2 years, because what's the effect of, what's the possibility of somebody re-inquiring and actually starting from 3 years ago? And we have a case study on our website, and also I link to it through my LinkedIn as well. But if you go there, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The reality is we do have conversions from those campaigns for that specific type of students. And we're talking here, this is a for-profit type college with the demo being over 25 years old, right? And so without getting into too much specifics, it definitely has an impact. And I don't know, hopefully that answers the question.
I don't think it did, actually. So traditional age student base being more the 18-year-old. So if you're going...
Yeah. So for those type of the younger demo, and I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question initially. We like to do multi-touch campaigns, right? So yes, Instagram and Facebook, combination of that with email, that's where we see the effectiveness of that. And do they convert? Yes, but a multi-touch campaign is sort of most effective.
Awesome. Next question is, what software do you recommend to integrate data sources?
Right. So there's a combination of systems, and I'll let I'll give just a very quick thing, and then I'll let Anthony answer it more in detail, I guess. But there's a combination of system in play, right? If you're a school, you have your own SIS system. Then you have your CRM on top of that. Then you have your marketing automation on top of that. Then you have an LMS system, right? And so. What do we recommend for data integration? For multi-touch cross-channel attribution, I think GA is a great place to start, so hopefully you have that in place. And if you have that in place, is it talking to your CRM? And if it's not talking to your CRM, do you have an LMS in place that it can talk to, right, which is a lead management system? And then, so Anthony, you want to?
You kind of address it there, right? So as far as SparkRoom goes, we can, some of the things we're exploring, right? So GA is a great place to start, like I mentioned. and we're able to pass information, or GA allows us to pass information from something like SparkRoom, post it back into Google Analytics. Whereas when the conversion is actually happening, we can actually capture some of those Google Analytics metrics and post it into SparkRoom. So that's really where the joining of the two data sources will really occur. And I mentioned, not to get too technical, but I did mention, so Google Analytics, for a specific user on a specific device, right, it's not going to address the cross-device gap that we identified, assigns a unique client ID for a user. So we should be able to capture that and pass that into an LMS system like SparkRoom, and then bind that with that user's data, and then pass that client ID with our LMS ID back into Google Analytics. So then we're not really pushing personally identifiable information back and forth between systems. We're joining the data between some kind of identifiable number that's randomly generated for that user.
Yeah, the last thing about that is for us, we created SparkRoom to become a hub where the joining of those data points can happen to a certain extent, but in reality it's connected to GA, to Google Analytics, but in most cases we also need a third party, which we're also integrated with for sort of more sophisticated attribution, right? But there's no way around not having your CRM or LMS system being connected to one of these channels and a place to see it, the data.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're exploring and we're getting a lot better at.
So a perfect segues into the very next question is, what plans do you have to integrate attribution into the SparkRoom product? So you've mentioned some of those. Is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we discussed, so yeah, we're totally looking to integrate with GA right now. We're prototyping that out, and we have successfully prototyped most of this out with one of our beta clients. We're also about to prototype out with a third-party solution, integrating with SparkRoom and another client. So if we have interested...
And we already have dashboards when it comes to single channels, so you can see that sort of impression to enrollment view within that same channel. We have a pay-per-lead dashboard that can show you from that point on, but we also have a paid search dashboard. So basically we're integrated with Google AdWords and with GA.
Right, yeah, and we're already showing that impression to start now, that complete representation end-to-end of a campaign all the way ending up to a start and an enrollment. Now we're just trying to make those attribution points to other sources, right? And that's something we're
actively working on.
Actively prototyping now.
So I'm going to skip to a very related question that I think you can probably quickly answer based on what you've already said. How do we share the conversion data with Google Analytics?
So posting back, I'm assuming then from there, yeah. So Google Analytics has what they call a measurement protocol, and it's nothing more than a post that you post back into Google Analytics. So once the data gets into Google Analytics, you have to ensure that on the GA side of things are also configured properly to identify, all right, this data I'm pushing back is identifying an enrollment as another conversion metric that also shows within that reporting. Right,
and cost data as well.
And cost data as well, exactly.
How do you find out if a lead has already seen an ad?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So that's where tagging comes in place, and pixeling and cooking and all those good things, right? It really depends on your channel and what you're doing. So, you know, there's an impression tag. Wherever we can place that to make sure that you know, a specific person, a specific device, without obviously knowing who they are, have seen an ad and identify them with a user ID. That's where that happens, right? So it's all impression tagging. An impression is literally just a viewability of a specific ad, and that can happen on any channel. So SparkRoom is, just to give you an example, one area where it's really hard to do this is Facebook, but we're white labeled for Facebook for impression tagging, one of the very few platforms or media teams. You know, then you have tagging within display, which we also do for the impression. So there are a few gaps that still exist, right? But again, we try to connect that through things like Google Analytics and AdWords, where the impression data is relatable to some sort of a click data eventually. Yeah.
Okay, I've got two more important questions. So is direct within Google Analytics source data becoming more or less meaningful? This person is saying that they've read that direct is now more of a catch-all category and not a true measure of users who type in your URL in their address bar.
Yeah, it kind of is a catch-all, right? And that comes down to, again, making sure any data you have coming into Google Analytics is tagged properly, either through the URLs or through any data you're posting or uploading into Google Analytics. But overall, yeah, if you start digging into that direct channel, you'll see, all right, maybe this came from a vendor, and that'll at least help you identify, all right, we need to get this vendor some kind of conversion tag, which then pushes into GA, so we could start to pull them out of those direct groupings. Right?
Yeah, I think it's actually a very good and important question, because Google Analytics tend to group things into direct when they don't know or they don't want to show the source. And so we've done a lot of experiments where we realized that they've grouped things together into direct. So the whoever is asking, you're absolutely correct. That's the case. So as Anthony mentioned, the way to configure Google, you need to configure to begin with Google Analytics correctly with the right filters to start with, and how you have it set up, right? So that's one area you start with, and then tagging everything that's coming in separately.
Okay, and there's more questions that are coming in. So the Google Analytics solution is a great one to get started, but it's digitally based. So if you've got traditional channels that are running, what solutions do you suggest for the attribution tracking?
Yeah, it's totally more focused on digital attribution and tracking. They do allow you, however, to upload, or I should say import data, if you can understand how to do that and tie that to, that digital information you have. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Akil, if you want to elaborate a little bit more on, like, what else is out there, what third-party solutions can do.
Yeah, so there's a lot of there's various third-party solutions out there that allow you to sort of create baselines a little bit more scientifically and overlay the offline data to understand what impact it had online, down to, say, the spot, the time of the day, all of those things, right? If you're talking about TV, of course, each channel is different, but we are in the process right now of integrating with a couple of those sources. Without giving the names of who they are, please email us and we'll give you a list. But if you're looking just at Google has an Analytics 360 and then Odometry as their sort of upgraded enterprise version. But then you would have, from a cost perspective, you really have to be buying a lot of impressions to be able to make that cost effective, right? So there are other solutions out there that can achieve that. But yeah, at the end, everyone uses different algorithms and different methods, and sort of we're happy to discuss that offline and sort of send you a list if you email us, for sure.
Awesome, great. What is the success rate that we're seeing for tracking attribution of affiliate networks?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm trying to actually, I think for affiliate networks, how are we able to track the attribution there?
Oh, sure. It's another very good question, because what are you doing with the affiliate networks? Are they driving traffic to your website, to your landing pages? And if they are you tagging their URL? Are you giving them a tracking URL to begin with, so you know all the traffic that's coming from there? Are you tagging that so when it comes into your website, it's going into the right bucket into Google Analytics, right, for example? And then are you tagging their impressions? So whatever system you're using, whether it's Google Analytics or others, as long as you're able to tag and pixel and sort of add those parameters and so on, then you can add to that mix. I think if you're just buying a lead and you're not hosting the landing page, right, and they're doing their own traffic and they're just posting the lead to you, you really have no pre-lead data, right, other than the lead itself, and you have no visibility into that pre-lead data view. If you want to have that view, you can absolutely track it. You just have to let them post or drive traffic into your own pages.
Great. All right, well, we are out of time, so if you have any additional questions or would like any further information, feel free to reach out to us at webinars@sparkroom.com. And lastly, I want to let you know about next week's Sparkroom webinar, the 2016 year-to-date Higher Education Inquiry Generation Inquiry Generation Review. We'll be presenting topics based on the Q2 2006 Inquiry Generation Review that was published earlier this week. It's next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can sign up for it at sparkroom.com/resources. So that's it. Thank you everyone for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. For more performance marketing resources, including our series of on-demand webinars, go to sparkroom.com/resources.